All right, and hello, and welcome to our nursing news you can use at 5 with Baxter Professional Services and the Nurse Shark Academy. Thank you guys for tuning in. We're running a little bit behind today because we've had a lot go on. I've been in a great event. A yes event, learning how to say yes to some things. And it's been a great event with Suzanne Evans. So if you haven't had a chance to hop in there, I think there might be a chance for you to kind of catch some of that. And so I wanted to go ahead and get started in because it's still going on and I got to get back, but I want to go ahead and get started with our day. And I wanted to make sure that my voice would hold out. I've had a bit of a cold, so I do apologize if I have to cough through this, but we'll get going. So today is May the 3rd. Woohoo! New month. And it is Nursing Month. So I want to say, first off, thank you for all your wonderful service and what you do as nurses out there. Thank you and hats off to my fellow nurses. All right, so let's get started with our first affirmation. Don't ever doubt your worth. Don't ever doubt your worth. Number 2, be patient. The best things happen unexpectedly. Be patient. The best things happen unexpectedly. And lastly, never put your time into the hands of the ungrateful. Never put your time into the hands of the ungrateful. So, those are our 3 affirmations for today from the Inspirational Daily Calendar by Lauren Dratch. All right, so I'm going to skip on the what I'm learning segment because there's a lot that I'm learning and I don't have time to go through all my 4 pages of notes with you or many, many other pages. But also, I wanted to get into the news so that we can get going and get started. And I will update our show notes and everything on here to let you know what we have coming up for this month, and because it is Nurses Month and we're going to be celebrating nurses all month long. So let's get started with the news. All right, so our very first article today, this is from USA Today, and I happen to pull this up today. It's U.S. faces perfect storm nurse staffing crisis. About a third plan to leave, survey finds. I'm going to take a little bit different track with this story in a moment, but let's get into it. So it says, USA Today says the nation's long running nursing shortage worsened during the COVID-19 pandemic, with a growing number of bedside nurses feeling tired, burnt out, and planning to leave the profession, according to 2 reports. About 3 in 10 registered nurses say they are likely to leave their career due to the pandemic, according to a survey released this week from AM AMN Healthcare Staffing Company. Now, I want to say this again. This is always my mantra. Don't leave your profession. You can leave your job, but you don't have to leave your profession. And I'm going to tell you how a little bit later. Okay, and it says another report by the National Council of State Boards of Nursing found that about 100,000 registered nurses left the profession since 2020. I want to say that again, about 100,000 registered nurses left the profession since 2020. More than 600,000 intend to leave by 2027 due to stress, burnout, and retirement. And I say this because this is, again, becoming a problem. We've covered this on the show numerous times. But this is what I find interesting because May also is Mental Health Month, Mental Health Awareness Month. And it says the AMN survey reported 80% of nurses had a great deal or a lot of stress, an increase of 16 percentage points from 2021. Nurses were also more likely to believe the job affects their health or feel emotionally drained compared to 2 years ago. The National Council of State Boards of Nursing survey of more than 50,000 registered licensed practical and vocational nurses found slightly more than half felt they were emotionally drained or used up, and nearly half were fatigued or burnt out. And it goes on to say that nurses with at least 5 years of experience reported higher job satisfaction than those who are just starting their careers. That trend played across age levels too, with about 8 in 10 baby boomers satisfied with their job compared to 6 in 10 Generation Z nurses. Younger nurses are also less likely to recommend nursing as a career. And I think part of that is nurses, historically, when you started in nursing, it was a whole lot different. You didn't have all the support with the technology and things like that, so you had more hands-on practical things that you had to do. And it makes me wonder, because coming out of the pandemic and all these things, people are re-evaluating their work-life balance. And it's really difficult to have that when you're in nursing career, particularly when you're starting out. Because I remember when I started out as a brand new nurse, I was told, don't be expecting to work on day shift. You're going to have to work evenings or nights because everybody else had to do that. You have to work your way up to a day shift position, because most nurses, are women, and if they have children, they want to work when their kids are in school so they can be home to, when their kids get off of school. And so my expectation coming in was to work evenings or nights, and it was just understood. But I think a generation now, to where I remember we were having this discussion and people didn't want to work on holidays, weekends, etc. And I'm like, but that's the nature of the job. And so this is an interesting article, and it goes on to say about 36% of nurses who work in hospitals plan to stick with the profession but are looking for a new employer. Only 15% of hospital nurses plan to, quote, continue working as I am, according to the AMN report. Nurses in other settings, such as medical officers, were more likely to stay in their position. And so I think it depends on where you work in nursing. And so let's go to the other industry that is always big: nursing homes and long-term care centers. They saw dramatic declines in the number of working licensed practical nurses or vocational nurses. Some homes employed nearly 34,000 fewer licensed practical nurses or vocational nurses than they did as of March 2020. And you're going to see the repercussions of some of this in the later stories that are coming up. And so these are some of those issues that they've been noting in the article. And there's a lot more that I don't want to get into because of time constraints. But read this article from the USA Today. And I want to say this. So getting back to the idea of not leaving your profession, but leaving your job, I am seeing a wave of nurses who are looking to become entrepreneurs. And I applaud that. Anyone who follows me knows that I'm a very big proponent of nurse entrepreneurship. And I think as nurses, as we're beginning to understand what our value, what our worth is, we're going to take that to the marketplace and start marketing our own value to the marketplace, and the marketplace is responding. How do I know this? Because of the rise of staffing agencies, because of the rise of the gig economy, to now that they're developing models for nurses to go in and plug into when you want to work and when you don't want to work and be part of that gig economy. And then we're seeing more and more nurses now that are starting out their own businesses. And so I think this is going to be a wave of nurses really coming back to that entrepreneurial start that we had. If you look back at what nurses were doing historically, nurses were entrepreneurs. They were working in their community. They were working in the homes. They were bringing their skills to the table and saying, this is what I can offer. Nurses back in the day would prescribe treatments. This is something that they don't like to talk about. Medical establishment doesn't want you to know that. But if you look back at how nursing started, nursing has always been an independent profession. And then it was only when we were gathered under the hospitals that we started seeing some of those freedoms chipped away at, with that patriarchal mold and model that they have, where physicians are at the top and everybody else is at the bottom. And historically it was more of a team approach where everybody brought their skill set to the table. So you're starting to see nurses that are out there, and now I applaud those organizations that are saying, hey, we want to be able to bill for our services too. We want to be able to monetize our services because what we do is valuable, and we're starting to see a really big push for that. And so as nurses are becoming entrepreneurs and speaking out and doing things because we're looking for better work life balance, because we're looking at making a better society, right? A healthier society. Nurses are looking at innovative ways to impact the healthcare of those that they serve. And so I'm excited about that, and I'm excited to be a part of that. And so I'm going to tell you a little bit later about how you can become a part of that yourself if you're interested. Okay. So we're looking at that. So this is where it brings up this really sad story that I want to bring up. And again, there's a couple of stories here that I wanted to share, but this one is coming out of the Chicago Sun-Times, and it's been all over the news. And I feel really bad actually for the staff and for the residents here. But it says Lincolnshire nursing home under investigation after most staff doesn't show up. That's really sad. That's really sad. It says local and state officials are investigating whether neglect by new management was the reason a Lincolnshire nursing care facility with 104 residents was so understaffed that 3 residents had to receive care at a nearby hospital. So I just want to sink that in right there. Yeah. A contract employee at the facility of 150 Jamestown Lane called 911 for help Monday morning after no medical staff and only 1/3 of the facility's total employees arrived for duty. Monday was the first day the Wheelshire LLC took over the facility operator from the previous owner, Warren Bar Rehab Facility, said Lincolnshire Deputy Chief Kimberly Covelli. Calls for comments from the Wilshire were not immediately returned Tuesday. Covelli said 3 residents were taken to Advocate Condell Medical Center in Libertyville for medical treatment. At least 2 of the residents received the type of care they usually get at the facility when there are enough employees. State officials said IDPH nursing home surveyors responded to the facility Monday morning after being alerted to the lack of clinical care staff. Employees who had worked under previous owners were called in to help and provide care to the patients at the facility. So Covelli says we are trying to determine why staff didn't show up that day. Was there a plan in place for the new business owner to have staff there? We're trying to determine where there was neglect. IDPH director, Dr. Samir Vora, said a comprehensive review and investigation is underway. We are grateful for the swift response by local EMS and police officials in Lincolnshire, as well as our sister agency, the Illinois Department of Aging, all of whom assisted in responding to this urgent issue. And so this is a story that has been all over the media, and I just happened to pick it up because it's been in several different places. But this goes back to those issues of why people are leaving the profession. Can you imagine being, if it said they had no medical staff in the building, people didn't show up? Because I don't know what happened. I don't want to speculate without knowing the full details, but this is something we're definitely going to follow. But these are just some horrific things that's going on right now. And so here's another big story. And again, it's not beat up on nursing homes. This is just the stories that are out there, because this makes me, this one's a cringe worthy. So I'm going to say just a trigger alert warning here. This is very cringe worthy, and I'm not saying that all facilities are like this, because I know for a fact that there are some great facilities out there. I actually worked with them, and they try really hard to do the best for their residents. And I do remember that some of these things that they say happen, we used to do. Okay. In nursing, there was not, I remember we would get on our dementia unit, we'd get some of our residents up for breakfast, and we would put them in the corner in a chair, and then push the table in front of them so that hopefully they'll stay put so we can get them fed. We would do that. And so that would be considered confinement now, but back then that was standard practice. So I want to kind of give you a clearer picture. So again, I don't want to like bash these facilities, but we also need to be aware of some of the things that are going on. So it says nursing home staff abuse residents through intimidation and punishment. This is from the Iowa Capitol Dispatch. And we've had stories from them before. It says a Southern Iowa nursing home has been cited by the state for abusing 2 of its residents through unreasonable intimidation and punishment. It's the second time in 7 months that the Lennox Care Center in Taylor County has been cited for resident abuse. Last year, a nurse at the home allegedly tied a resident of the home to a chair using a bed sheet. The latest allegations involve 2 residents of the home who were reportedly denied food, beverages, or privileges because the staff felt that their incontinence was deliberate attention-seeking behavior. According to state inspectors' reports, facility records show that spring and summer, 1 female resident of the home was repeatedly denied the opportunity to go outside or smoke when she declined to take a shower or refused a meal. Another part of the story, it says, okay, last June, the nursing home director wrote in the resident's file, she refused a bath yesterday and has refused to come out to meals today, informed her she will not be smoking all weekend due to her choices. The next day, the DON wrote, she refused to get out of bed for lunch or breakfast. She laid in bed and wet it until all blankets were soaked. She has been told she is not going out to smoke all weekend due to her refusing her bath, and there's nothing she can do until Monday until she can get a bath. She signed a contract that she would take a bath or she could not go out to smoke. And so in February, a nurse wrote in the file that the woman was, quote, very rude to staff and was yelling and screaming at them because they won't push her wheelchair to the dining room. Staff explained that it was part of her therapy and she needed to do it herself. And so again, here's the thing. Some of this is therapeutic. And I'm not talking about withholding food, and I'm not talking about not allowing someone their freedom. But I had a resident that years ago, he wouldn't bathe. So it became a hygiene issue. It became really a patient safety issue with him. And he wouldn't allow us to clean the room. So it was court order. We went to the judge. The judge gave us an order that says he had to get a bath once a month and allow us to clean his room once a month and wash all his clothes, because he was getting rodents and bugs and stuff like that in his room because he just was not taking care of himself. So we had that court order. So there's something very different when it's used therapeutically. But this sounds like, allegedly, that this was punitive, and there's a difference. So it says in March, the nurse wrote that the woman was in the dining room and repeatedly asked for a second helpings of food, which the staff refused to provide. The staff reportedly showed the woman a contract in which she apparently agreed with staff dietitian to refrain from asking for second helpings. I'm not sure why that was. After the woman made a 5th request for second helpings, the charge nurse informed her that with this type of behavior, there could be consequences, and told the resident she wouldn't be let outside to smoke. State inspectors later reported that they reviewed the contract referred by the staff and noted that it was not signed by the resident, the staff dietitian, or any employee of the facility. Wow. Okay. Inside the resident's room, the inspector found a sign posted to the wall that said, you agreed with the dietitian that you will not ask for extra food at meal times and extra snacks as you have had substantial weight gain. Okay, so now we're fat shaming residents. Wow. There's one thing to have it in the care plan, to say you'll remind them about their dietary restrictions because they're trying to lose weight or whatever, but you allow them to ask for things. You maybe say, well, can we get a lower calorie count alternative for you, help you with your we do this all the time in the hospital too. You have dietary restrictions, they will not let you have the salt on your tray, right? But it doesn't go to the fact that we put signs up on the wall to shame someone. Another female resident of the home had allegedly been told that there was no reason for her to summon the staff to her room every 2 hours for bathroom assistance. A nurse's notes in the resident's file stated, quote, she was incontinent of urine at 4 p.m., 6 p.m., and 10:45 p.m., and incontinent of bowel at 8 p.m. She was educated that there was no reason for her to be incontinent at all, as she was the youngest resident here and has had no children. She only has accidents for attention and when she was mad and she doesn't get her way on something. Another note of the residence file stated she was very rude and snarky with CNAs. She was incontinent for no apparent reason. Resident number 6 had always done this for attention even before she came to this facility. So again, there's all these things that on the surface sound really bad and damaging. And I do not agree with how they handled this in no way. Am I endorsing this? But I also know that there can be times when it is a control issue for someone. And it may be part of their illness that this is a control issue, but it should be documented in a much better way and not how they've documented this. It should not be documented this way. It should be documented that, maybe she has a personality disorder, maybe she has a developmental disorder, maybe so, whatever. But the way they've documented is very damaging. And yeah. So me as an LNC, I like to preach documentation, but these documenting in such a way can sometimes, when you're accusatory and things like that, can come back to bite you. So you have to be very careful about how you document, and when you're documenting, use some quotations of what the person said. So the Iowa Department of Inspections and Appeals imposed and immediately suspended several fines against the facility, totaling $27,000. The fines tied to findings of residence abuse in the form of unreasonable intimidation and punishment, failing to put in place interventions to prevent falls, failing to ensure staff members possess the basic skills to address residents' needs, and failing to report to the state resident abuse and accidents with major injuries. So there's a lot that, oh man, this is a long article. There's a lot more in there, and I don't want to go into it, but I'm bringing this up because these are some things that on the surface sound really egregious, but maybe not. So I'll give you an example with the bed sheet. Years ago, it was care planned and it was approved by the state. We had a resident that was quadriplegic. She had a certain way that she needed to use the bathroom. We had a certain ritual for her in order for her to be able to be in the proper position for her to use the bedpan, because she did not want to soil herself. She did not, and we could not get her up on the toilet because she would fall off the toilet. It was all those things. It was care planned that we would tie her legs with her bed sheet to the bed rails while she's on the potty, on her pan, so that she can properly go to the bathroom. We also had at one time a resident where it was care planned and approved by the state for us to bind her legs with the transfer belts so that her legs wouldn't flop out, because she used a motorized scooter, and if her legs flopped out, she'd fall out of the scooter and injure herself. And it was actually a dignity issue and a mobility issue for her to have her legs controlled so that she can move around the facility how she wanted to. So on the surface, if you were to look at that, you might look at that and say, oh, that was abuse, right? But on the flip side, it was actually empowering the person, and it was approved. There's a right way to do things and there's a wrong way to do things. And unfortunately, it sounds like this might have been the wrong way to do things. All right, so let's kind of move on. Let's move on. I want to talk about this one because we've often talked about it is Nurses Month, and I want to highlight some of the things that we've been talking about. This is from San Diego News, and we've missed some things. And so I want to make sure we bring this up. It's talking about Filipino nurses died at a disproportionate rate during the pandemic. And this is something that we haven't talked about, and it has not, made the nursing circuit in the news. And so I wanted to make sure I bring it up and remember these nurses for their sacrifice. So it says Filipino nurses make up 4.5% of the nursing population, but account for 25% of COVID deaths. According to Catherine Siniza Choi, a historian who studied Filipino nurses and the author of The Empire of Care, she says a number of us are able to stay at home. We're able to shelter in place and work at home. But Filipino nurses who are working in the front lines in this country don't have that privilege. One of the things that we can do is learn about their presence, learn about their history, and the historical contributions they have made to American healthcare. The Philippines was an American colony for 48 years until 1946, and Americans implemented nursing schools throughout the islands in the 1900s to civilize its people. During World War II, American soldiers relied on the Philippines as a medical hub in Asia. Since then, a steady stream of Filipino nurses has made the journey to American shores. In her film Nurse Unseen, director Michelle, I hope I'm saying this right, Josu, or Jasu, spotlights the roles of Filipino nurses in America and the rich history of these first responders. She writes or says, a lot of this project was me just really coming to terms with my Filipino identity, seeing how my personal family history was rooted in all of this broader history. I realized it was a much more emotional project than I had anticipated, and we deal with a lot of difficult and challenging themes, such as mental health for healthcare workers and how a lot of them were experiencing burnout on the front line. And so in the documentary, it says one of the New York City nurses she spoke to um, suffered burnout and attempted to take her own life. She said he survived, but that's an example of how tough the job was for some of these nurses. In her film, she gives a nod to Filipino medical professionals of the past, present, and future, saying it's more than a stereotype. She says, I always took that for granted. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand that there is incredibly nuanced history behind that stereotype. For all of those people, either considering being a nurse or being pressured into being a nurse, know that there's so much more than this stereotype, this generalization, that there's a rich and layered legacy to be proud of. And so I just wanted to bring that up. I think that's a very important moment in nursing history. And so let me know what you think and comment on it. And if you're a Filipino nurse and you have comments that you want to share, please feel free to share some of those comments so that we can all be educated and learn. I've had the privilege of working with Filipino nurses, but not knowing the cultural history behind that. But it would often also make sense because and I'm not trying to stereotype, but I just noticed that the nurses that come from other countries oftentimes are the ones that are on the front lines, and they're really, I'm not going to say more dedicated, but they're more likely to go the extra mile in some ways, and sometimes to their detriment. And again, I'm not generalizing, but I've just seen that, and we've kind of covered that a little bit in previous news segments about some of the lawsuits about keeping some of these nurses bound to these horrific contracts. So they have to work these shifts or they'll never pay back their fees or whatever when they come here. So all these things kind of play into it. So I haven't actually seen this documentary, but if anybody has the link to that, or I can see if I can find that, I greatly like to see it. So I want to say thank you, and I'm just going to say that, you know what, Filipino nurses, you're our nurse making a difference for the day. So yeah, there we go. All right, so this is another story, and this will be our last story for the day. But I wanted to bring this up because I was just talking about, yes, we need more nurses running for office and things like that. And then we have this happen. And I just find that there's been this shift of attacking nurses lately. It's like all of a sudden we're under attack. And so I don't, not sure exactly why this is happening or what's happening with this. But this is a story about this attorney. Okay. And let me make sure I get, yeah. And so this is coming from the Riverfront Times. And so and it's on several different news outlets, but this one I found was interesting. It says, embattled St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner is currently enrolled in an advanced nursing program at St. Louis University, the school's registrar has confirmed. Before becoming a state representative in 2013, Gardner was a registered nurse, and she appears to be furthering her nursing education in that field, even as her office has shed an alarming number of staffers. At this point, only 2 prosecutors remain in the circuit attorney's violent crimes unit. Yesterday, the attorney tasked with presenting cases to the grand jury put in her notice. Gardner has said that efforts to remove her from office are, quote, a witch hunt, and in a fiery speech last weekend stated, I don't care if I have nobody in my office. And so this was an interesting case because I didn't understand at first what the problem was. And let me see if I can pull up the opposite article that I had, because it was quite interesting. And it was, okay, so I'm going to go back to where I was. And so when I first saw the article, I thought, well, wait a minute. This can't be right. Yeah, so this is coming from News 5. Okay. So the Missouri Attorney General accuses Kim Gardner of violating the law. So it says, according to the law, taking classes in violation of the law that requires her to, quote, devote her full time and energy to her duties as the city top elected prosecutor. So they're saying that by going to graduate school, she may actually be taking time away from doing what they wanted her to do. And it says, according to the subpoena, Bailey's office is seeking all agreements between Gardner and the clinic from January 1, 2021 to the present, all correspondence and emails from and to Kimberly Gardner from January 1, 2021 to the present, all documents reflecting her hours worked to the present as a volunteer, employee, student, or contractor, including clinicals, internships, practicums, all surveillance video from all surveillance cameras, whether inside or outside the clinic. Now, first of all, you can't really, I don't know about that one. That kind of like is a lot. So he says that basically her enrollment in classes violates the law. And so I'm trying to understand it. So it says, the statute says that the circuit attorney shall devote their entire time and energy to the discharge of their official duties. If she's not at work or showing up for murder trials because you're taking classes during the day, that's a serious concern. And so that's where the issue is coming from. So I've never would have heard this, but it says, Gardner spokeswoman Allison Hawk issued a statement responding to questions from 5 on your side. And it says, Circuit Attorney Gardner believes the issues in our criminal justice system often relate to our broken healthcare system. After serving as a line attorney at the Circuit Attorney's office and seeing firsthand the underlying issues that drive crime, she became a registered nurse. She continues to stay current with classes at St. Louis University to add to her training and advance her mission at the CAO. The circuit attorney has done this at a great personal cost to her time with her family and loved ones. Any suggestion that she's not fully committed to her duties as circuit attorney is blatantly false. So it says Gardner has spoken publicly about her background in nursing, telling supporters during a weekend event, quote, I have a law license. I have a nursing license. I'm a funeral director. What they're doing is they want to make sure they ruin me. So I don't know. But I found this quite interesting that this is an attorney and she's working to do other things, and now and she's using her nursing career supposedly allegedly to help her career as a prosecutor, and apparently they're saying no, she's not putting all of her time into doing that job. And that kind of makes me wonder, I don't know what the statute says, but I'm thinking, is that a reasonable demand? I mean, could you legitimately say that if you're out there enjoying a game of golf, or you're attending a church service, or you're doing something and you're not working for the state, that you're not meeting your demands just because what she's doing is furthering her education and possibly taking care of patients during her clinical time? I don't know. I don't know what she's getting her degree in either. That's the other thing. I have no idea what she's getting her degree in. And so those are some questions that I have. And my other question is, if there's people that are leaving your agency, why are they leaving your agency? Maybe it's because you're having those standards that you can't have a life outside of your agency. I don't know. Those are those questions I have. So if anybody has any insight on that, let me know. But that's our stories for today. So I wanted to go ahead and close that out. Those are our stories for today, and just invite you also to what's happening and what's coming up in the next couple weeks. So next week, next Tuesday at 6 o'clock, we have an event at for the Black Nurses Association. We're hosting a nurse appreciation event and membership drive. So we're asking nurses that are local here to Anderson, Madison County, come out and join us at Culture Urban Winery, 6 o'clock p.m. And then on Friday, May the 12th, we're having a Black Nurse Practitioner Appreciation Program. And that will be, again, that's sponsored by Convergence Health. And that will be at the Anderson Country Club. And there are limited tickets. And when I say limited, very limited, the tickets still available. So if you need a ticket, you need to contact me today or tomorrow, because the tickets will probably be gone. And then also, because it's Nursing Week, next week, we'll be having our 2-day online challenge, our Nurses for the Kingdom challenge. I'm very excited to be here for that. And we're going to talk about taking those principles of kingdom entrepreneurship and applying that to your nursing profession. As you can see, and I do cover it because it is news, there's so much negativity out there about nursing and on the airways, and I want to reclaim our nursing profession back and claim it for the kingdom. So join me for those events. They'll be live streamed on our Facebook page, the Nurse Shark Academy page, and you'll also see it on our LinkedIn page. So you can register for those events. I look forward to that. Thank you for tuning in. My voice is leaving me, so I'm going to have to say goodnight. And I want to have a great day. Want you to have a great day. Thanks. Bye-bye.